Okay, good morning. It is Friday, the 18th of April, and we are back with episode, I don't know how manyth, of the latest series of the Goosed podcast. This season has actually been really fascinating. I'm yet to actually interview a guy. So we're really leaning into FemTech, and I've got one of the best and brightest FemTech products in the market today, Heidi Davis, with previously known as Identify Her and now as Peri. It is a menopausal product, so I am going to be highly out of my depth today. So Heidi, hello, good morning. If you'd like to introduce yourself and explain who you are and what you do.
Hi, great to be here. So, yeah, you've already introduced me. I'm Heidi Davis, but I think I probably know a little bit more about perimenopause and menopause than you do. Well, I'd like to think so.
I hope
That
so.
is that's all I do at the moment, and I've been ingrained in that for the last 5 years. I'm the co-founder of Peri, as you already outlined. We used to be Identify Her. That's really the parent company, and we've been focused on building a product for perimenopausal women that can help them be guided as they go through perimenopause and find the right management strategy. So, without going into too much detail now, what I can say is it can be a very, very difficult period for women. So, about 75% of women will actually suffer what we call moderate to severe symptoms. That means symptoms that are life disrupting.
Okay.
So, they could affect your work or at home. And currently, it's a lot of guesswork to try and figure out how to navigate that. My background is in nutrition and molecular medicine. That's my academic background. But then after that, I worked in another startup. It wasn't my startup, but in someone else's startup called Neuritas, and worked there for 4 years before I started Peri with my co-founder, Donal Gorman.
Wow. I think that's how we all kind of get this startup bug. So both myself and Martin, who were involved in Goose, we're both actually operating on our own startups outside of Goose. So I think you kind of get that thing of, yeah, we started a thing and now this is life now. So I assume the obvious starting point question is, what is perimenopause? Because I know the word menopause. Is there? I assume this is like a stage pre-menopause, or is it just like different symptoms? Or explain this whole what menopause and perimenopause is to me, because again, I'm a guy in my mid-30s. This is out of my wheelhouse.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be actually. And I think that's going to change. I think
Yeah.
everyone will know more about menopause and perimenopause, which I'll explain now in a second as we go in the next few years, because there's a lot more awareness around it now. And it's kind of been a lot of stigma around it before and hasn't been talked about, and women have just suffered through. So, menopause. How long does menopause last? Do you know?
4 or 5 years, I'm gonna guess.
Yeah, so I'm going to surprise you today.
What?
So, yes,
Oh.
so menopause. Now, it's very often used interchangeably, but actually, menopause is when you get a diagnosis. So, it means that you have gone 12 months without your period and you're experiencing what we call menopausal symptoms. And they can range from hot flushes, which is this warm sensation that very often happen. They'll start so the upper body and moves out, and you can see red faces, sweating. It can be really, really difficult to women in public.
Yeah.
You have night sweats, which is kind of the same, but at night. You have brain fog, which is where you kind of forget things. You have anxiety, a lot of emotional things, anger, irritation. You might never have thought the chewing of your husband was irritating before, but right now you cannot handle it. And these are just it's down to hormones, right? And there's
Right.
so many symptoms. But the day you get your diagnosis is when you've been 12 months without your period. They say you're menopausal. The next day, you're postmenopausal.
Right.
All the years leading up to that, which is probably the 4 or 5 years you said, which isn't a terrible guess for perimenopause. So it can last up to 12 years, but probably on average, it's about 4 to 5 years. It can be 1 to 2 years. It really ranges for women. And I do think we're starting to learn that it starts a lot earlier than we thought with
Yeah.
some of the symptoms. So all those years leading up to menopause, where women are experiencing what we call menopausal symptoms. So it's the same symptoms
Sure.
as you would think of for menopause.
Yeah. It's the stuff they
That
put in all the
are
TV shows. It's like, oh, I'm sweaty. But
yeah,
again, this is the typical, it's not done right. It's just like, here's a worst case scenario for the purpose of television kind of vibe. But I'm sure there's like a range of stuff that, like, everybody's different. It's the same with any kind of symptoms of anything. Not everybody's going to show up the same. Am I correct in saying that?
100%. It's a super personal journey. So you're not that out of your depth. You have some
Yes.
information. Yes, very correct. So you're doing well. Yeah, these felt, what's interesting is that perimenopause is actually the period where women often suffer the most and have the
Right.
more severe symptoms. Now, it can continue to your 80s, and I'm really sorry for the women that are listening to this and are going through and are thinking, is this never going to end? But, these symptoms can continue. But what we need to learn is how we can navigate it. And like you said and touched on already, it's a really personal journey. So what works for me might not work for my friend or my sister or for somebody else, even though we might have similar symptom profiles. So there's over 40 symptoms that you can have. And I
Jeez.
suppose that's why we're working in this now, is this guesswork that women have done, trying to, number one, figure out what's going on. Is it perimenopause? I don't actually know what it is. It can be really hard for women,
Yeah.
particularly early on. And then secondly, the second issue is that when you go to your doctor, most doctors haven't been trained in menopause or perimenopause, and there's no clear diagnostic test. So they just say, what are your symptoms? How are you feeling? And very often it can overlap with stress. Women are in their 40s, they might have young children, they might have sick or elderly parents, and women tend to do a lot of those jobs and take
Yep.
a lot of that responsibility.
Yep.
So often it's put down to stress and just life things.
Yeah.
This is happening, and women are put on antidepressants, antipsychotics, and not to say that they can't help symptoms, because they often do, and sometimes there are alternatives to hormone therapy for women that can't take that. Hormone therapy is the other pharmacological
Yeah.
treatment that's used, that a lot of women go on, and that's to help them get their hormone balance again. But it's still a lot of guesswork. There's no personalization in the journey as it stands today. So it can be very, very confusing for a lot of women.
That's really weird. Like, I would have, like, and this is just like my own ignorance. And like in 2025, you think that doctors would be better qualified, in a better position to kind of like understand the symptoms and kind of, although I'm saying it as if I'm surprised, but I'm not, because like I've seen the medical infrastructure, and it's very much a case of like, I've even seen, Jesus Christ, I've even had a mate who went in with a knee injury before. It turned out he actually had a blown out ACL with something else. And you're just like, well, if you can miss something that's that forward and obvious, like someone telling you symptoms of something, I can see how they can misdiagnose it as stress and life and this, that, and the other. But that's fucking mental, in my opinion. You think in today's day and age, but this is where like a product like yours obviously comes in. So like, it's a good time to ask, I suppose, like, how did Identify Her initially start and become Peri, and what's the product, and kind of like, where did this all begin?
Yeah, so it started with, I guess we've talked about the problem now, and just to kind of add on to that because that's the backstory to why we're ended up here, is there's actually no training on menopause. And if you look at the healthcare system, it was made by men for men traditionally.
Right.
So there's a lot of other, it's, I'm laughing. It's not funny. It's kind of like but we are changing it now. But the truth is, you have other things like endometriosis, you have other areas where, there's just no research. And if you don't put research into it, it means you don't understand what's going on. And the same with clinical trials back in the day, women were excluded because we're too complicated, too much hormones, too cyclicals, too much going on.
Yeah.
Let's just put the men in, and then we'll, put a lower dose for the women. She's, pink it and shrink it, as they often call it.
Wow.
So it really is a systemic healthcare problem.
Yeah.
But we're all doing our piece to try and change that. So we ended up working on Identify Her, which is the parent company of Peri. And the whole idea behind that was, between myself and Donal, was, okay, if we want to make an impact, we're both scientists, if we want to make an impact on health, where do we go? And women's health, which is, it's the biggest white space, unfortunately, but that's just how it is. So we were like, okay, it's going to be women's health. And it really started that broadly. As we looked into it, we both had a lot of interest in disease risk and kind of, I guess, prevention and prediction of disease. So understanding your long-term health rather than just what's happening now.
Okay.
And as we went through that, we realized there's such a gap in data for women. So if we were to build, let's say, an algorithm for you to try and understand what disease you're going towards, there's a lot more data out there that we can use.
Obviously, it's going to be hard to see. I fucking love stress, like, so it's going to be hard to see. And knowing my family history, I really probably, do you know, after this, I think my fear levels are just rising. So I'm probably going to go to the hospital straight after this and get a check.
It's gonna get more positive. The solution is positive. But I suppose what we found is that for women, the data was missing, and the
Mm,
inflection point of disease, so where women have much higher risk factors, is actually post-menopause. So it's after menopause. And this period that we have now explained what is perimenopause, that whole leading up to menopause, women experience symptoms, and we know that these symptoms affect future risk of disease. So, not managing your symptoms and just suffering through or making it through, as women were doing, is a really bad idea, to be honest, because it means that you're setting yourself up for higher risk of cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, osteoporosis as you enter post-menopause or right after menopause. So for us, it was like, how is this possible? And why is nobody collecting data? It's all like women talking to women. All the studies are self-reporting. So we decided we needed to collect that data. And at that point, we didn't know we were going to build Peri. We just knew we needed to collect this data, and that was kind of, and we're still a data company. We're
yeah.
trying to move women's health forward, and that's kind of our mission. And as we looked at it, we realized there's nothing out there that can detect symptoms of perimenopause, which is a really, really important point of data to understand long-term health. So what did we do? Well, we ended up building hardware, which I wouldn't recommend to anybody because it's not an easy thing to
No,
do.
no, it's
Um,
not.
I'm not an engineer, and neither is my co-founder. We had some incredible partners, but we built a hardware, so a wearable. You have the wearables, you have the rings, they have the Aura rings, the Ultra Humans. I don't know. There's the Whoop for kind of sports performance. You have the Garments, the Apple, which is more like a watch than anything else. But you have all these wearables, but none of them are focused on women specifically. Some have moved into that area. What we did is we built a wearable that sits in a different place. It sits under the breast, but this is designed specifically for women that go through perimenopause from start to finish.
Oh,
We have built our own algorithms to detect hot flushes, night sweats, anxiety, and the symptoms of menopause instead of what you normally see on wearables, which would be things like,
heart rate.
what's your step, your heart rate, your heart rate variability. Very often, I mean, good information for the people that can decipher it and understand it.
Yeah,
But what we always said was this needs to be meaningful for these women that are suffering through perimenopause. So yes, we do sleep, but we look at sleep in
in a very
relationship to
different
their
way. Yeah, of
symptoms.
course.
Yeah. So we tried to really, we didn't try. I think we've succeeded in doing that because we've had 500 women telling us what they needed and talking to doctor is what are the symptoms you want to understand. And then obviously picking the symptoms that we knew we could detect if we built the right database. So we're launching in August, and it is a wearable that sits under the breast and then provides the woman on a connected app all the information. So symptom profiles over time, you can get your daily, your weekly, your monthly symptom profile. And then we have an AI engine, which just means we have a brain that takes all that information and data into it, and it gives what we call text-based information to the woman that gives her insights, actionable insights and encouragement. So telling them what is working, what is not working, what should be your next step in this
Wow.
journey so you can get a good management strategy. So we're taking away what I mentioned earlier, the guesswork.
I love this. So basically, you've got like a little kind of like sticky kind of tab almost. Like the best way I can figure it out in my head is almost like a nicotine patch type thing where it sticks onto the body, and then that's obviously sending data back then, which is being correlated inside the app. And then over time, this is going to build up that profile of you that you can then go back to your doctor and go, "Oi, mate, all your guesswork. Here's the booklet of everything. What's going on? Help."
Yeah, so in many ways, that's one option, and that's one that we feel is really important, is empowering women with that information to say, take me seriously. There's a lot of medical gaslighting
Yeah.
to women. So women go in and they're saying, you're fine, it's okay, we'll do a blood test. Blood tests are not supposed to be used for perimenopause, but now we're empowering them with information to say, look, what's our next step? Here it is. Have a look at it. Take me seriously. And then the other thing is that we know that lifestyle also matters when it comes to symptoms.
Yes.
We have met women that do everything right and they're still struggling. So I'm not saying that lifestyle fixes it. It can
No.
often be a combination of HRT or lifestyle. But sometimes lifestyle is a good start. And a lot of women don't want to go on HRT. So what we provide is not only guidance on how your hormone therapy is working, but also diet, exercise, sleep, how's that affecting your symptoms, and what can you do, and what's working, what's not working. So if you're starting to do a new exercise, let's say you start doing more mindful exercise like a yoga 3 times a week, and we see a change in your anxiety score, we give you that feedback to say, this is really working for you, even if it's minimal, but it means that's the encouragement piece. So sometimes with lifestyle, it takes time. So the encouragement piece is to say, it might be minimal now, but we think if you continue this, you're going to see changes. And then we help guide them both on kind of the pharmacological side and the lifestyle side.
See, I told you my mother's going to get a reference at some point, and this is it. It's like I now feel a little bit because my mother would never have been a sleeper, let's say. Like, so back in my college days, when I'm probably going to give away her age here, so she would have been mid-40s when I was in college, and every time I came in hammered, guess who was at the front door going, so she probably needed to sleep more, and I wasn't helping the situation. So yeah, sorry, Burns, my bad.
Well, now you know why. That could have been it. And I tell you, sleep difficulty is one of the biggest symptoms. Now, it doesn't help that
She
your
doesn't sleep
teenager is out drinking and you're waiting for them to come home. That does play a role for sure.
It definitely doesn't help in the stress levels.
But perimenopause does cause, and that's one of the biggest issues women have, is actually sleep. They're not able to sleep anymore, and that affects everything, as you know.
Yeah, because like then the other symptoms can then be almost like contributed to a lack of sleep. It's just going to be a case of, well, if you sleep more, it's going to fix it. And then it's a case of, well, no, because there's underlying other pieces of the puzzle here that we're ignoring because we're just picking on one and going, either you're stressed or you're sleeping. So sort out them and everything else get better. But it's not that. So like, I think this is really cool. It's like, it's a wearable, and it literally, it just makes a lot of sense. It's a wearable, you wear it, and then it gives you all the information that you need to make more informed decisions. Like, class. I really like the idea of that encouragement piece. It's like, right, you're exercising. You can see that there is progress. Don't give up now just because maybe you're having a bad day or a bad week. It's like, you can see over time that there is some progress to your symptoms. So keep the boot down and keep going. And we're like, it's probably not going to fix everything, but if we can alleviate things and make life better, and like, yeah, I'm definitely not the only one who thinks this, because you've won an absolute rake of awards recently. So I think we're going to get into that. You've won a HBSU award. We've won a CES award this year, and like winning an award at CES, like, I'm sorry, but holy fuck, that is huge. To get for an Irish company to win anything on an international stage is massive, and an event like CES to come home with an award, I think it proves that what you're doing is the right thing. I love tech for good. This makes me happy.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm sorry, I have to take some water.
Oh no.
Oh, as I said, I've been sick.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
It's all right. I can rattle on while you drink your water. But no, like so like, because like I met you we were at the Enterprise Ireland at Enterprise Ireland New Frontiers Day, and obviously you were giving the story up on the stage at the time, and this was off the back of winning the HBSU award through Enterprise Ireland. But then obviously doing some research, I saw the CES award, and that was the one that really blew my socks off, because I was like, oh wow, this is huge. Because I've been to CES, it's robots coming out left, right, and center, and big AI and big data. So like something niche in something like this, like FemTech, to come away with an award is just like, okay, cool. People are waking up and seeing that there's a problem in this place.
I'm sorry, I'm totally lost my voice.
It's okay.
I'm going to try. I'm going to try and continue. So we did get the CES award. It's just kind of gone now. We got the CES award, and it was huge, just for women's health, FemTech. We went last year in January. So sorry, I've lost my voice.
Take your time.
Just in the middle. So we went to CES last year in January, and we showed off our device, and it was really a test run at CES. And interestingly, or not interesting, nobody really knew what perimenopause was. And we thought, okay, US is our first market, and nobody knows what it is. They just kept going. They couldn't even pronounce it, to be honest. It was like, what is it, like pre-menopause? And I was like, it says Peri. It's not pre, it says Peri on the side. Yeah. Why do you say pre? But they didn't get it. And we went back this year and we won an award. And that was just huge. And I really sent that to a few kind of high profile women in the US that are advocating for menopause. And I just said, look, we won this award. We'd love to talk to you. And everybody answered. Everyone were excited. These were cold calls to the people that are at forefront of menopause in the US. We went to CES and it was like the biggest change in a year. So like you said, yeah, it makes a lot of sense to do this, but the timing for the US particularly is just incredible. I don't know if you remember, but obviously I remember about 5 years ago here, there was a huge blow up on around the perimenopause menopause conversation. That only happened in the US last year.
All right.
So they're so behind. So that's why we were standing at the stand, we're like, nobody knows. Like, they're not even looking at us. What is this? I mean, we got attention, but it wasn't, what we wanted. So to win the award this year, we got coverage in The Verge. We got lots of really good PR in the US, and that's our main market.
Sure.
So to be able to go there and talk about it and front women's health, and I saw some more women's health companies. I didn't see any the year before. So it was really incredible. And not to say that HPSU, the EI award was great too, but for different reasons. The reason there was because it was kind of selected by your peers and in a group, and that's just a really nice award to get. But to get it in the US was big.
Yeah, like for anybody who doesn't know what CES is, so you've basically got a range of, I would say, 5 or 6 huge global events. Like in Ireland, we have the Dublin Tech Summit. You have Web Summit that hits a couple of countries. You have the World Mobile Congress. You have CES, and then you've got kind of 1 or 2 other kind of, I suppose, more niche ones dotted around the world, but they're kind of like the heavy hitters. And like, having seen CES before, you've got like things like, Boston Scientific and their mad robots got flagged out there initially. Like, this is a big event. So every time when we, if you go on Instagram and you've seen like the Boston Scientific robots, that walking dog and all this kind of crack, that's where they're showcased. So for an Irish business to go over there with a very particular product and not even just be noticed, but to win an award, I think it shows this kind of thing that like there's this major push in like female-driven technology, in the sense that like there's a very big understanding now that it's a space that's been not even ignored, totally abandoned for a long time. Like, so outside of this, my other thing I do is fantasy football, and we're looking at like merging the men's and women's game together, because data's data, it doesn't actually matter. And like, we're kind of every time I meet someone, they're like, nobody's doing this yet. No. I'm like, what? Yeah, fastest growing sport in the world, turned over 2.5 billion in the last 12 months, and nobody's looking at it. And they're like, huh, yeah, telling you. And they're just like, I'm seeing this just from like sports numbers. So from a medical perspective, it must be, I'd say the first few years of this, you felt like you were banging your head against a brick wall, just going, what the hell is happening?
Yeah, it's been, I mean, it's great now because now everybody sees the market, but we were ahead of that. We were building a product where people were like, fertility, and I was like, yeah, there's lots going on in fertility, and I'm very happy there is, because it needed to be done. But there's also other women outside of that or beyond the fertility age, and actually, or sometimes they are in those years, but they're going through perimenopause. But yeah, it was difficult, but definitely less difficult now. What we used to struggle with was go beyond the problem slide. And I'd like to say that I'm self-aware enough to know when I do something well and when I do something poorly. Not always, maybe, but sometimes.
We all have our blind spots.
I was like, they're just never going to get it. And we realized after a while, it was like, if we spend too much time on this, we know from experience, there's no point. We just need to leave this meeting, end it nicely, not worry about it. Don't go back. Don't have a second meeting, because if they can't get the problem, then there's no point going into the solution explaining that. And so we did have a lot of that, to be honest. But look, we got to where we are now, and it hasn't been an easy road. It's been,
I can imagine,
it's been a struggle, but it's been really fun.
Good, like that. But that's
and there's nothing else I want to do, and I don't think my co-founder wants to do anything else, and I don't think our team members want to do anything else right now either. Good. It's just it's an incredible team, and we feel really passionate about it. And actually, just touching on sports, you're right. Women in sports, it's the same. We face We face this in healthcare, we face it in sport. And you just mentioned that now, but I just got a video from my co-founder last night, and I don't know if you've seen it. It's from Orange, the phone company. They did an
Yeah.
ad where they followed the French football team, and you see like a video of this
Oh, they did the
amazing
overlays of
face.
them. Yes, I've seen
And
this.
then
This is a
they're
brilliant
like at the
campaign.
end, they go, actually, these weren't men, and they just used AI to put on, male features of male heads of players,
Yeah.
but actually it was the women.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't believe it. Like, as in, nobody that watched that would have thought that. And it just shows you that women often are underestimated.
I
And
think it's
it's
mad.
changing, but
But it's such a
yeah.
mad space at the moment. Like, it's definitely like, I even get this like in this thing. It's like, is there enough people? It's like, there will be. There will be. Like, I have my niece now, and she's playing football. She's out with her brother playing as much football a week as him, and like, there
Yeah.
might not be the audience right now, but just you wait. But like, even just in terms of this space in general, like, what I've even noticed over the last year, like, I'm learning about endometriosis. The 2 years
Yeah.
ago, that was a word that was totally alien to me. But I have 2 or 3 friends that are on Instagram and TikTok, and they've become big advocates of it. I didn't know. Like, there was a girl I used to work with. There was one of the girls I used to work with in another business, and I didn't know that this was something that was going on. I just thought they were a bit snappy and bitchy at times. And like, this was me being just unaware, and now they're actually openly, actively talking about it and using their channels, and they're creating, a space where they're going, hey, you're not the only one with this. I have this, and da, 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 da. And it's like, I've even been like 2 years ago, I wouldn't have even known what that word was. Now I feel like I kind of have an understanding of, oh, this isn't fun. Kind of, there's times where I kind of go, yeah, it's nicer being a dude at times. Like, yeah, like, we have our own issues, but we're not here to talk about them today. But like, but yeah, it was that kind of thing of like, I've even been learning more because I suppose the information that's there is becoming more and more obvious, and like, just normal day-to-day people are like more forward and openly talking about things, where I think there was a stigma even 2-3 years ago going, no, this is a me problem and I don't want to bother anybody with it because I might feel I might look weird, or nobody needs to know that this is what's going on with me. I'm really happy that's changing.
Yeah, and I mean, it's incredible even just hearing you say that, because step one is destigmatizing, whatever, if it's endometriosis, if it's perimenopause. The other thing is that women are kind of afraid sometimes, in the workplace, because they think, okay, well, if I'm not performing, or are they worried that I wouldn't perform? So you don't want to say it
Mm.
out loud. But I think now that's like, actually, they just need the support so they can continue to perform and do well in the workplace.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is that, yes, women are extremely powerful when they start talking up and going into community. So we're community people. Women are really good at community. And when they start that, which is what you see on social media, is what you've seen in the perimenopause space in the UK and Ireland, it's what's happening in the US now. It's women coming together and saying, we demand better.
About time.
We're not doing this anymore. We've like, this has been, I don't want to do what my mother or my grandmother did. I don't want to live like that. I actually want to live my life
Yeah.
when I'm 40, because I'm still young, or 50. And so they're always pushing for it. And then the last thing is, we need men like you that are listening and saying, actually, I had no idea, but I'm really glad I know now. I'm glad it's changing. And
Yeah.
they're kind of our advocates, right? So my co-founder is male as well. Having people like that are like, no, we need to change this, or at least the awareness and understanding of it. We have husbands that are living with wives that are perimenopausal and don't understand it. They don't even understand themselves, so they can't explain it.
Yeah.
But even having the understanding means that you can have an open conversation, you can work together to get through it. And like you said, men have their issues as well. We're not here to talk about that, but it's all about open communication, right? So if we can have that, and everybody's learning, and then we can get the science and the research and the funding to move other things forward as well. But yeah.
Like, I can even say from like my mother and sister. So like, I remember when we were growing up, I'm going to get murdered for this. But anyway, we're going to get murdered for this one. But I remember like when I was younger, there'd be times when my sister would be off school. I was like, why is she off school now? Like, girl things, don't ask. It was only like when we got a little older, and she was the one to say, my stomach's in bits, fuck off.
Yeah.
That we were like, know. Do you know what I mean? But like even then, like it was just a case of we were like, why is she off school again? She's never gone to school. Blah, 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 blah. And it was like, oh, she's having a tough time. Now I get it. But now even she gets it, so she can even turn around to her boyfriend and be like, this is what's going on, because she has her own bits and pieces. Not my place to talk about it, but she's able to talk to him and go, wait, buddy, here's what's going on. And he now understands it. So he's even like on track with everything. And these are people in their mid-20s. And like, if you were to ask any of my mates in their mid-20s, were they having those conversations with their girlfriends or their wives, I can tell you absolutely no chance in hell. So it's great that this is changing. But I suppose like where I'd want to go next is like, where do you, like so obviously you're planning launching in August. There's a waiting list, I assume, at the moment. How many people? What's the game plan for the launch? Talk to me about launch.
Ooh, what can I say about launch? It's still a little bit secret. We're launching in the US first. We're opening pre-orders in August, shipping in September. So I can say that. We are working with some really incredible women
We'll come
in
back on
the US that will help us with the awareness piece. So I suppose what we've spent the last 5 years doing is the R&D and like building a really good product that can make an impact. We don't have a voice in the US. Yes, we won an award at CES, but that's over now.
Yep.
And that's a good one to have in our back pocket.
Dope.
But you need a lot more than that. So we're also partnering up with the PR company in the UK that are incredible.
Cool.
And we have a game plan, but it's still the plan
We'll
is
keep
there.
that under wraps for now.
We'll keep it, but August is the time to be looking.
Cool. Let me change.
For us, this is more than a product than sales. This is kind of leading the space is our goal.
Yeah, complete lifestyle overhaul, and I love this. I won't get too much into the woods on this, but I suppose a good question I'd like to ask would be, and this is again me just probably not being overly aware, because it's a technical device and a data device. Do we have to still go through kind of like medical kind of, the whole medical process of approval and stuff in the States and these kind of hurdles, or are you just very much considered tech wearable, move on, or like what's the kind of approach there?
So it's changed over time, in the sense of when we first started, we weren't going direct to consumers, so we weren't going direct to women. We were going to work with doctors.
Okay.
But as we mentioned earlier, they don't have an awful lot of training on it, and doctors tend to be pretty happy with the way they're doing things. Women aren't, but doctors are pretty happy. Menopause specialists, particularly in the US, really get what we're doing. But ultimately, if we were to use our device to guide a diagnosis of perimenopause or guide what treatment women should be on, we would sit under regulatory approval, FDA approval, because we would then be giving guidance on what should be done. What is difficult with that is that when you go through these approval processes, there's something called a predicate device. It basically means that there's something on the market that is very much what you're doing, and you piggyback off that and you say, mine is so similar to that one. So basically, you can give me approval based on that. That's in simple terms. It's a little bit more than that. So I'm not talking down anyone that's gone through the approval process as a predicate device, but that's the way you want to go, because nobody has done what we're doing ever. There is no device that we can say we're doing pretty much what they're doing, let us get approval. So we actually have to collect an enormous amount of data to get that approval, and that's very expensive, and it's a very expensive process overall. The other thing was, we then realized actually doctors aren't that interested yet. They will be when women demand better care. But women are extremely interested in understanding what's going on and getting help, because they've tried and nobody wants to give them help. So we decided to go direct to consumer. In that case, it sits in what we call a wearable space, because we're not diagnosing perimenopause, we're giving symptom information, which is not a disease. So what we do is we sit and we have all the kind of regulation when it comes to safety. So we've done all that testing for the US market, the European market, and Canada. So there's still tests you have to do, but it's definitely a simpler process. And then over time, if we want to, and if it makes sense business wise to do it, we can go through an FDA approval with a lot of consumer data to make sure that we get that approval for medical doctors. But that's more of a long-term game. The timing is now in the US to get a product out. We have run an awful lot of trials to build this algorithm, so we have a lot of science behind it, but we don't have the trials you would need for FDA because they're too expensive and too laborsome, and that would take another 2-3 years. So
And we don't have
missed
time
the
for
whole
that.
point
No,
then.
and ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Like, that makes a lot of sense, because straight away I would have thought FDA approval, medical approval, and then you're doing that by jurisdiction, because obviously Europe is going to be different to the States. That's going to take a lot of time. But obviously, by really honing in on that kind of data piece, kind of makes this a lot easier to get out there and into people's hands. Like, where do we hope to be in like 5 years? Oh yeah, give me that one. Give me the most obvious question everybody hates to answer. What does this look like in 5 years? What's our big picture?
But I actually don't hate to answer that. I've always thought years ahead. I find it harder to decide what we're going to do in 3 months because things are changing so much at the moment compared to like what you really want to do long term. So I already touched on it. Like our launch, as well as everything we do, is always with the intent to lead the space in perimenopause. So becoming the leaders. So in year 5, I want us to be the leaders in perimenopause and how it's managed and talked about, and that we've kind of led the conversation and the management of it. And then secondly, we are agreeing to a lot of scientific studies in universities in the US. So they're not necessarily business goals in the short term. No. But what that means is in those studies, they're looking at using our sensor for symptom detection. And then they look at risk of Alzheimer's. Another one is for cardiovascular disease. And then we put that data together. So the other thing that I want to have in 5 years is a good start on a women's health database where we really understand the link between the management of symptoms and the long-term health within different diseases, and kind of contributed to that research, because there's a really strong database that has an impact and there's a lot of value in.
It sounds so logical, but there's so much work. Like, I can imagine there's so much work in that. Like, it's crazy that there isn't like a database or studies around this already. But here, let's lead that space. Let's be the people who put that in, in everybody's face and go, "Oi, time to wake up and pay attention." Like, yeah, is the waiting list still open if people wanted to be involved?
You can get on the waiting list, and so that's on myperi.co. You can get on the waiting list. When you're on the waiting list, you get our newsletters and you get a lot of updates on where we are, even in the manufacturing, and when we're gonna get it to you if there's delays. We also ask questions on color choices. What do you like to packaging? So we're trying to get the whole community to help us, because I've already learned that a couple of things that I thought intuitively I knew and I just threw out there were wrong. So I was like, oh, they'll definitely not like that color. That's a terrible color. I'll put it out there. And I was like, oh, they like that color. So what we've learned is if we're going to sell it to women that are going through perimenopause and they're on our waiting list, we should get them to decide what they want and not me, and have myself kind of talk and say, yeah, I like this one. And the same with my co-founder and the other people in the team.
It's so like, I like black.
It really like, and it seems so logic. You're like, oh, I definitely know the answer. Sure, I'll put it out to the community, but I definitely know the answer. And actually, I've got it wrong nearly every time. Not on the product, don't get me wrong. The product is good, but that was also guided by women. The symptoms we're detecting were the top 4 out of 5 symptoms that women wanted. So it's all been guided from start to finish by what women want and need.
Yeah, I think that's a big change from, I suppose, the historic way of going, here's what you get. Now come back and tell me what's wrong with it, and we'll fix it later, rather than getting the whole community involved in the first place and going, do you know what we're going to do? We're going to actually bring out a product that is made for you. So yeah, give me that website again, because I'm definitely going to make sure we put this in myperi.co, and that's where people can get on the waiting list today.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. This is really, really, I feel like I've learned a lot today, and it's mad.
Good.
I'm coming away from this going, wow, I've learned a lot. So right.
You know what else you'll notice now that you walk away? You're going to notice that you see perimenopause everywhere. So everyone I speak to is like, we had even our patent solicitor, he's based in Germany, and he did kind of a few meetings and he was like, I see perimenopause everywhere. And one meeting he went, I was sitting on the bus and I was thinking about perimenopause. And I just said, oh, we've won now. We've got a patent solicitor sitting on a bus thinking about perimenopause. So that's our goal when we talk to people is when you leave, all you can think about is perimenopause and you'll see it everywhere.
It's like you got me now. God.
Yeah.
No, this is really cool. Is there anything that you want to touch on that we haven't kind of covered over the last 40 odd minutes or so?
No, I think we covered a lot of things, to be honest. No. Go sign up, follow us on social media. And, if you want to be a part of the community or if you want to take parts in studies, there'll be things like that coming out as well, where you can take part and be a part of it. So we had 120 women in Ireland initially that gave us their data, that helped us build our algorithm. So that's the way we worked, is that using the women in the community to help us build what we're building and making sure that this is specifically built for them, as you said, and it's not an add-on in the portfolio. That's what I call when companies have, lots of things and they go, and we do a little bit in women's health, and here's a bit of a perimenopause product. That's not what we're doing. We're very purposeful.
Here's our pink product over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, go away with that now. No, let's get focused in on this stuff. So, right, you said follow the socials. Let's follow the website. Give me the list. Where can everybody find you, get in contact, do all of
There'll be a lot more coming in the next while. So we're kind of really kickstarting it in May. So Instagram, LinkedIn, and then there'll be more channels, but they'll be our first ones on Facebook. But yeah,
of course, and that'll be all Peri. Straight up
yeah.
Peri. Very easy to find. Get on the website.
The website, and then Peri Tracker is our Instagram.
Okay, so and if anybody wants to get involved, I think anybody who knows anybody who's in that kind of age category where they'd be going through menopause, perimenopause, now that I've learned the language, definitely I would be saying absolutely, this is the whole idea here, is getting the community of people who are actually affected by this to share their information to make a better product so that everybody else is not going to have the same problems that you do going forward. So I would be saying to absolutely anybody in the network, anybody watching, anybody who knows someone that's in that category, get on the website, get on the socials, give the guys a follow, try get involved in whatever way you can, because by August, September, there's going to be a brilliant product out there that is going to, definitely change things, because we've seen the validation, we know the market, we know everything that's there. And I'm really excited to come back.
There definitely is a market, right? Yeah. Considering we're 50% of the population.
But this is the thing. But I think this is the thing. It's like people just assume it's like, oh, it's just some people who have problems. It's like, no. I'm very excited to see where this lands this time next year. I now will tell you for a fact, I'll be following you very closely, because I'm very excited to see where this goes. And you know what? This is the biggest part about why I like doing this podcast, because over the last year, I've met so many different founders and so many different backgrounds. I'll run off a few. There was a girl last year, she was making a medical device for men with premature ejaculation issues. I met another woman who was making satellites and was the first person in South America bringing satellites to space. I got to meet, like yourself, it's all these different cornerstones of technology, which is more than just, here's a new phone. It's the technology, and what's coming out of Ireland over the last 12, 18 months has been probably the fastest growing space I've ever seen. And we're doing Goose 10 years. And what I've seen in the startup community in the last 18 months coming from Ireland is bananas. So I'm so excited to see where you land.
Yeah, Ireland is an incredible place to be, actually, as an entrepreneur and a startup founder. So I think we're lucky we're here, and I'm excited to see everybody else as well excelling alongside me, ahead of me, behind me. It's really cool.
I'll give you one last question, and we're going to sign off, right? Last question, and it's the floaty question of, right, if you're someone like yourself with an idea, what's the biggest kind of learnings, takeaways that you've kind of had from starting this adventure over the last 4 or 5 years?
There's so many learnings. There's been learnings all the time still. You're always thrown in the deep end. Don't be scared to do it. You just have to take that step. If you really want to do something, it's not easy, but do it. I think probably advice take advice, but be careful with the advice you take. Like there's so much advice there, and I really value good advice, and I love some of the people that have been on the phone with me and helped me through things. I haven't always taken the advice, but I'd like to talk through it.
Yep.
But all advice isn't good advice, and make sure that sometimes you go, okay, I heard you, but I know better in this situation, and you know your business best. So
that's a huge takeaway. Right. I think I don't have any other questions for you today. So I guess I have to do the big sign off now. Big deep breath before we do this. Right. So where you can find us is we're obviously on Spotify, we're on YouTube, we're on every single place where you can find a podcast, both video and audio. You can find us on every single social media platform apart from the problem child, the artist formerly known as Twitter. We're not there. They're bad. Bolt. No, we don't go there. We're on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. No, not Twitter. TikTok was the one I was trying to say, even though they're probably a bad place to be now. But anyway, also LinkedIn. So Goosed.ie. You'll be able to find this podcast. We're going to get a write-up done over the next couple of weeks, kind of getting more into the woods on what Peri is and what they're doing. And Heidi, it's been absolutely amazing to have you here today. From there, obviously, as I said, follow their socials, get onto the website, follow the socials, get involved. I think you're doing something absolutely fantastic. So from my perspective, thank you so much for your time. Good night, good luck, good morning, good luck, good evening. I don't know, whenever the hell you're listening to this. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Is that a fast enough sign off?